Welcome.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Simsick.
And I'm Krista Williams.
Welcome to the New Paradigm Digital Workshop Series by Almost 30. Congrats. Investing in yourself is a huge deal.
Yeah, and we want you to get the most out of your experience. So we have a few guidelines that we suggest so that you really get the value for your money. One of them is telling all of your roommates, family members, partners, pets that you're going to be investing the next few hours within this workshop. We want you to not be distracted. We want you to not be interrupted. So really make sure that you're creating the container and intention that this is your time. We also want you to be comfortable. We are huge fans of being comfortable in comfortable clothes all day. So nothing should be different for us, but we want you guys to be seated in a blanket with a sweatshirt on, however you're going to feel most comfortable. Have some water next to you, have a journal so you can write down everything that's important that you're going to get from this time. Also, please note that we did do this live, so there's conversations about the chat, the people within the workshop. So those things aren't going to relate to the workshop experience that you're having, but this is minimal, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, and I would say after this workshop too, give yourself time to integrate. Don't rush into anything right away. Give yourself time to really absorb what you heard, what came up for you, maybe journal, and just give yourself time to rest. But we really hope you enjoyed this workshop, and if you do, we have more where that came from. So you can visit shopalmost30.com for more New Paradigm Digital Workshop Series offerings.
Enjoy.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
See you soon.
Afternoon, wherever you're joining from. So glad you're here for our workshop with Ryan Weiss.
I don't know why I can't talk yet.
Quitting anxiety.
I'm like,
sometimes we gotta warm up.
Sometimes you gotta warm up. Good morning, guys. I'm actually distracted by my comb over, so I might fix that when we have a break.
Solid.
I'm so excited to have you guys here today. As you guys are wandering in on this beautiful morning, afternoon, or evening, I would love if we just get the chat going and start with what your name is, where you're from, and your intention for the day. Lindsay and I love doing the intention piece because it's such a great community builder. We can see where everyone is at that's joining us. And we can also really ground in the actual intention for our container today. You might have something very particular. Maybe you want to work on your anxiety at work. Maybe you want to work on feeling anxious in the morning. Maybe you want to better support people you love and know that have anxiety. But starting with the intention really helps us to set the space and really helps you to get the most out of your experience in the workshop today.
For those of you that are using Zoom for the first time, the chat feature is down the bottom, so you can just click there and then make sure it's going to all panelists and attendees. Mm-hmm. And just share your name, where you're from, and your intention. Yeah, I think like intentions in general for me actually help my anxiety. Because if I go into a situation, a moment, a conversation without intention, I just feel so ungrounded and so like unprepared. So I'm excited to hear yours.
I think my intention for the time today is to understand anxiety better. I think that it feels different for a lot of people. I think physically we can kind of have similar experiences or manifestations of what anxiety is, but I really do believe that there's a more spiritual component to anxiety. I've always believed personally that it really was like my spirit or my soul was trying to talk to me and I wasn't listening as best as I could. So I'm really interested to hear the tips and the practices, but I really would love to get around the more spiritual components of anxiety because I know we're all a very spiritual bunch.
Yeah, my intention is to learn how to, meet my anxiety with more compassion, because I feel like I more often than not just kind of beat myself up when I'm anxious instead of allowing myself to feel it and actually following that feeling. I'm more wrapped up in how do I get rid of it. So I'm really excited to hear Ryan speak today. We'll introduce him in a moment. So as you continue to share your intentions, we'll share some of those in a moment, but just a little business. for these workshops, Krista and I have attended them and obviously hosted them, but it's just really important that you have created just a sacred space. So a quiet space, wherever you are. If you are living with people, just letting them know that for the next 2 hours, you are doing some work and just spending time with yourself. It's really, really important that we limit distractions. And that also means putting your phone on airplane mode is really helpful. I don't know about you, but if I have my phone right here and it's not on airplane mode, I'm like looking at it. So it's super important to disconnect in that way so we can connect here. We will be deploying some polls throughout, and those will pop up on your screen and you can just interact with them easily. And you can always use the chat feature. The chat feature is really for connecting with each other. Any technical difficulties you can express in there, and Krista and I will be observing the chat. And you can also just kind of agree or woohoo anything Ryan says in the chat. It's fun to be interactive in there. And then for questions, please reserve your questions for the Q&A feature, which is down the bottom, and we will be answering questions at the end. You can put your questions in there at any point, but we will be saving those until the end.
Yes, and today Lindsay and I are drinking our Zolt. We just started working with Zolt recently, and it's a hemp beverage. So they're little packets that I like because they spice up my water, which is nice. But the hemp is just relaxation. It has antioxidants, adaptogens, and you can have them morning, noon, and night. So it's called Zolt. Hey Zolt is their Instagram. We just started working with them, and we've really loved having ability to spice up our water morning, noon, and night with the beverage.
Yeah, it's super balancing. So wanted to tell you about that. But yeah, we want to welcome Ryan. Before we do, just to kind of set the space, we like to take 3 deep breaths all together. This just helps connect. Even though we're far apart, we can really connect kind of on a soul level, just simply with breath. So if you can just close your eyes for a moment. Find a really tall spine, roll your shoulders back and down, and just start to notice your breath. And if you find that you're taking shallow breaths into your chest, it's totally okay. But if you can mindfully move those breaths down to your belly, letting it expand. And then all together through the nose, take a nice deep inhale into the belly. Opening the mouth, audible exhale. Deep inhale through the nose. Big exhale out the mouth. Deepest breath yet in the nose. Let it go. Beautiful. Blink your eyes open. So grateful you're here. So grateful you have invested time and money into your evolution. It's so important and you are worth it. So excited to be here with you throughout this workshop. And without further ado, we'd like to welcome our friend Ryan Weiss, who is one of LA's premier life coaches. We met Ryan at Onsite last September, and Ryan is one of those people where you just feel seen every time you interact with him. And that's why we knew he'd be perfect for a workshop like this, to be able to hold space and to really channel some beautiful messages about how we can no longer be controlled by our anxiety. So Ryan, join us. Hello.
Good morning.
Did.
There we go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, you look great. Look at this crystal clear quality.
I love it.
Thanks, it's the Ethernet cable.
Oh my gosh.
We don't know what that means.
I know, honestly. We're so
How
looking
you doing?
you on today. You've been so transformational in so many lives, and it's just been so good getting to know you for the time we have. For everyone on, we met at on site, and we knew the first second we met Ryan that he would be in our lives. And if you are a fan of the podcast Almost 30, you probably listened to the episode on Tuesday, which was so transformational for so many. We spoke directly to anxiety. So after that, if you haven't listened, I highly suggest it. But when we started getting closer with Ryan, we knew we wanted to do something deeper, and the anxiety and the topic of anxiety is close to my heart. I've struggled with it my whole life and in my family. So having Ryan come on to do this topic is so special. So Ryan, welcome. We are so thankful you're here.
I'll say too, when we met, so when we were at Onsite, which is this experiential therapy trauma healing center that we love, we weren't in small group with each other, but I kept seeing you two like around and like was very interested, but there's a lot going on. And one of the rules at Onsite is you don't talk about your work. You don't talk about what you do. So we got to meet each other on a level of just like our humanness. And I fell in love with both of you. You're such incredible human beings. And then I think this process of like coming on the podcast and started dreaming up like what we can do together, I've gotten to know you in your purpose and in your business. And I just want you both to know, you get text message from me, like I'm obsessed with you guys. Like I actually mean that. You are so connected to your dharma and to your purpose. And it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful to watch what you've built and what you continue building and how much you care about. So for all the participants here today, these two ladies genuinely care about you. There's a lot of people in our world that see customers as like a business transaction, and I don't like to interact in those places.
Yeah.
I want you to know that behind the scenes, Lindsay and Krista are genuinely thinking about you and caring about you, and it's no wonder that you've had the success that you have. And I just want to bless you up because it's such a gift what you're doing every day. And it's a pleasure to do this with you.
Oh, it means a lot. Thank you so much, Ryan.
I mean it.
I want to say too, you know, I was thinking a lot about everyone showing up today, and I don't know if you guys think that like Krista and I don't experience anxiety with like the level, like, you know, I think Instagram is funny and you can kind of see people doing their thing and be like, wow, like they must never experience what I'm experiencing relating to anxiety. And I just want to tell you that we need this workshop just as much as you do. Yes, we've learned and we are exposed to so many tools and conversations that have helped us, but it's something that we still deal with. And it's been really beautiful to be in a place now where we're just more aware of what it is. I think when I was younger, I was like, what is this? And just trying to run away from it. And so people like Ryan have really helped me to step in and really lean into it. And it's been really, really beautiful. So I'm so excited for everyone. And no matter where you are in your journey, it's perfect. And just a little bit of business that I forgot. We do have one break during the workshop. So that will happen around noon, and Krista and I will pop on just to facilitate that break. But I think that's it. We'll let Ryan take over. We're so grateful. And I'm sure, Ryan, you can see some of the intentions in the chat, but they're really, really beautiful. So I feel like everyone is grounded and ready to go.
Awesome. All right, here we go. See you in 38 minutes. Okay, hi y'all. So just like Lindsay was saying, the reason I talk about anxiety is not because I'm not prone to anxiety. It's because this is something that I as well have battled with and struggled with. I'm a notorious nail biter. I can get really reactive. Even before this workshop, like I noticed myself just kind of like going over my notes and going over the schedule for the day and recognizing how much I want to fill these 2.5 hours that we have together with. And while I was going over my notes, I'll show you, I'll be vulnerable with you. I bit this nail off and this one. And I noticed myself biting my nails. And I then paid attention to what was going on in my head. And it was like these thoughts are like, I really want this to be a successful opportunity for people. I want people to grow. And then it was like, whoa, I'm in an anxiety moment right now. And I took myself through the process that we're all going to be going through today. And I share this with you because just like Lindsay and Krista were just saying, like, I'm not teaching this from some kind of a separate place. I'm in the room with you, in the battlefield with you, and only going to be sharing here today the things that I've used that help me. And so I'll get into that in just a little bit, but I thought so that we could really drop in and listen deeply, that we could start with a relatively quick meditation. So how do you feel about that? Let's just, if you feel comfortable, if you feel safe in your space, which I hope that you do, I'd like to invite you to close your eyes. And we're just going to take a deep breath all together. Take a deep breath into the nose. And again, let it out of the mouth. Let's do that 2 more times. Deep, 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 deep breath into the nose. Breathe in, breathe in, breathe in. Fill the belly, fill the chest cavity, fill the entire inner world. And on the exhale, let it all go. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. And one more time. Deep, 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 deep inhale. Breathe in deep, like you're stretching your body from the inside out, like you're making more room inside yourself. Hold that breath at the top. Can you sneak in a little more air? Breathe in a little more. Hold that breath. Notice how tall you are. Notice how tall your spine is. Stay that tall as you exhale out your mouth. Stay tall. Stay lifted. Squeeze the belly to squeeze all your air out. Relax the body and relax your breathing now. Beautiful. And so for this grounding meditation, we're going to start with a little bit of a mind, body, spirit check-in. So we're going to start, this is going to be a 2-part process that I'm going to guide us through. The first step is a check-in or an opportunity for self-awareness, to become aware of where am I right now. The second part will be an opportunity to regulate, which is kind of to ask the question, where do I want to be? And how can I gently nudge myself more into the space that I want to be? And so first we check in and just become aware of where am I now? And so we'll take a scan from mind to body to spirit, and I'll guide you through this. So we start with becoming aware. What's going on inside my mind right now? What's like the energy inside my mind? Is it fast or is it slow? Is it tight or is it relaxed? What are the thoughts that I'm thinking about or that I have been habitually thinking about so far today? Is my mind more focused on doubt or opportunity? No need to change anything, just checking in, just witnessing. All right, let's take a deep breath and let it go. Okay. Now we're going to check in with the body. You may want to place a hand on your heart and maybe one on your belly. Just check in with the body, becoming aware. How am I physically right now? Does the body feel present and healthy and strong? Does it feel relaxed Or does it feel tight, a little weak, maybe under the weather? No judging, just allowing ourselves to pay attention. How does the body feel? Maybe noticing any places in the body where you're holding into tension and just becoming aware. Good. And let's take one more deep breath. And letting it go. And the last check-in, we check in on the spirit level. And so, do I feel connected? Do I feel present to the largeness, the expansiveness of me? Do I feel connected to whatever it is that I qualify as my source, the energy of life? Or am I experiencing myself right now more as separate, alone? Am I experiencing myself more now as my small self, my limited self, my personality? Just checking in on a spiritual level of who do I believe I am right now? Again, no need to change anything. Let's take a deep breath in and let it go. Beautiful. Now that we've checked in, we'll move in a little bit into some regulation. So first we start with self-awareness, checking in. How am I? Where am I? And then once we become aware, we can start utilizing some tools to regulate, to shift a bit toward where we want to be. And we can do so on a mind, body, and spirit level. On a mind level, we will use a count. This will make sense in just a moment. On a body level, we will use a breath that will also serve to connect on a spiritual level. So very simply, we'll focus our mind on the numbers that we're counting and on the breath that we're receiving. So we're going to inhale a pattern, inhaling for 4 and exhaling for 6. So take a breath in and let it go. And then we'll inhale for 4 through the nose. 3, 2, 1. Exhaling for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhaling for 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhaling for 4, 3, 2. Beautiful. Inhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Inhale 4, 3, 2. Exhale for 6, 5. Keep going. And take this on your own. Inhaling for 4. And then exhaling for 6. Keep going on your own. Inhaling for 4, exhaling for 6. Keep the breath moving. If thoughts start to come in, refocus your awareness onto the sensation of the breath. Refocus your awareness onto the numbers that you're counting. Simplify your awareness to those two things. We'll be here for about 30 seconds. Beautiful. Keep going here. And take one more deep inhale and exhale. And when you're complete, just relax the breathing. And just see if you can notice how you feel now in the mind, in the body, in your spirit. Just notice if this practice that we're all doing together as a collective, just notice if anything has shifted. And let's take one more deep breath together. And let it go. Okay. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back into your space while remaining aware of this world inside of you that you've just tuned into. What is it like to look at your computer, to look at the space around you while remaining aware that I am that which is within? Okay. Good. Yeah, I'd love to see just for a moment, and then I want to go into our learning, into our workshop. How do you feel right now? So I'm seeing that Krista and Lindsay feel good. Sav is feeling so much lighter. Adam is feeling zen. We're just one practice away. All the time. We're one breath away, one practice away. Amanda Joy Smith is feeling more at peace. Thank you for sharing, y'all. Madeline is feeling light. Elise is more in the present moment. Awesome. Awesome. Brooke is feeling grounded. Hey, Brooke. Jackie is feeling super relaxed and calm. Good. And hopefully from this relaxed place, from this calm place, from this grounded place, we can listen with the depths of ourselves and participate over these next 2 hours inside the depths of ourselves. Okay? So feel free to continue to share how you're feeling as I move into the content. So I'll be here for about the next 30 minutes talking about some practical things. So anxiety. What is anxiety? Well, firstly, I want to myth bust a little bit. And the best way to myth bust about anxiety is to ask the question or to focus on the statement, I am anxious because. And typically we follow that sentence with, or that statement with, I'm anxious because I'm overwhelmed by my workload. I'm anxious because there's too much going on at work. I'm anxious because I don't have enough money. I'm anxious because my kids are driving me nuts. I'm anxious because I'm homeschooling my kids and I'm not a teacher. I'm anxious because I can't seem to lose the weight. I'm anxious because I have this health condition. Whatever that is for us. Or I'm anxious because all of those things all together. And that right there, the way we think about anxiety and why we're anxious, to me, exposes the biggest myth about anxiety, which is that the things in our lives are causing our anxiety. I want to invite, as we go into this workshop today, to look at anxiety very differently. That instead of thinking that something's happening to me, which is causing my anxiety, and then if that's what I then believe that in order to get rid of my anxiety, I have to fix that thing. Instead of believing that, which I think is a relatively disempowering way to look at anxiety, I believe, or I've come to believe, that anxiety is actually what happens inside of me, a byproduct of what happens inside of me as a result of thinking instead of feeling. It's what happens in those of us in us adults when we've lived a lifetime of not learning, not training our system how to feel our feelings. Feelings or emotion are energy in motion. And as we know, energy can't be created nor destroyed. And so our whole lives, we've experienced these waves of emotions that have happened inside of us. And unless, if you listen to the podcast, you heard me say, unless you had enlightened masters for parents, we probably didn't learn how to hold space for the feelings that we've been feeling throughout our life, so that then as adults, we can process them out. Instead, because energy cannot be created nor destroyed, we've throughout our life felt these overwhelming emotions, which is not our fault. We came into a world that, this isn't negative to say, it's just the truth, that is largely dominated by competition and scarcity, the things that are very counterintuitive to a loving, compassionate heart. We came into a world that's largely dominated by the thought forms of fear and not enoughness. And then the daunting nature of being human in these bodies that we're largely overly identified as, believing that our life is going to end at a certain point, and that we've got to get it all in. We've got to get the success and the relationship and the health and the perfect body and the successful life within a certain amount of years before we go, right? And so we're born into this world that induces anxiety, that is counterintuitive to a loving, connected heart. And as a result, we feel these massive waves of emotions, of fear and pain, not enoughness, confusion, doubt, insecurity. And because we've never learned how to feel them, we've never learned that it's safe to process them, to bring them up, to question them, to inquire about them, to nurture ourselves with these emotions, because we never learned that, we depressed them. We pushed them down, we pushed them away. We didn't feel safe to feel our feelings. We didn't feel like we'd be able to be in relationship. We felt like we were too much. We felt like if I feel this feeling and share it with another, that they won't be able to love me, they won't be able to accept me. I'll be too much. And so we've depressed them, we've pushed them down, we've pushed them away, and we've done that over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And over and over and over. And remember what I said, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So it's not that when we push that stuff away that it disappears. It's actually collecting and collecting and collecting within us. And then the situation, the circumstance happens at work or with our boss or with our boyfriend or our girlfriend or with our body, with the health diagnosis, that is a trigger. And it pushes our button, and it pushes this button that opens a cavern of unprocessed emotion that we've never allowed ourselves to feel. And that is so overwhelming that, again, what do? We distract, we medicate, we ignore, we fight or flight because it's too much, because we don't know how to deal with it. And meanwhile, now all of this stored energy is like revved up inside of us. It's like a soda that we've like shaken up and it's like waiting to explode, and it's within us. It's right here. But meanwhile, we're afraid to feel it because we don't know how. And so what do? As I said, we distract, we medicate, we go eat, we go work out, we go do something, we phone a friend, we lay on the couch, we whatever, we drink a drink. But meanwhile, all of this stuff, or one major way to ignore, the one that we really do all the time, and I want you to think of this as an addiction, is that instead of feeling all of that stuff that's inside of us because we feel like it's so overwhelming so we don't feel it, instead, what do? We turn our attention to all of our thoughts. And now all of this energy is happening inside of us that's got us nuts, but we're not paying attention to it. Instead, we're paying attention to what we're believing, to what we're thinking about the situation. So if it's a situation with my boyfriend who's, said the thing that's got me crazy, and now I'm thinking, I can't believe he said that to me. Why did he say that to me? Does he really love me? Is this going to go the way I want it to go? And now we're in an anxiety attack. We're experiencing massive anxiety. And what I would reference, or what I would define as anxiety, is actually what happens when we're ignoring, when we're thinking instead of feeling everything that's happening inside of us. Are you with me? So, why? Why are we doing this? Why are we avoiding feeling what we're feeling? Is it because there's something wrong with us? Is it because we're just prone to anxiety? No. First thing I want to say to you is there's nothing wrong with you. In fact, the fact that you're here shows how much right there is with you, shows how much you've been working on yourself and been working on your awareness to tap into these resources to grow and learn. There's actually so much right with you that you're experiencing anxiety. If you weren't experiencing anxiety in the world in which we live today, you're either an enlightened master or you're not paying attention. So the first thing I want to say to you is it makes total sense that you're experiencing anxiety and overwhelm and doubt and fear. Okay, that's the first thing I want to say. So why is it that we experience anxiety as a result of an inability to feel our feelings? So I want you to travel back to your early childhood. And if it helps you right now to close your eyes and to find a moment of insecurity or pain or overwhelm or confusion in your childhood. And so check in with what was going on in your family of origin and what was going on inside of you. I want you to check in with, was there a primary adult, a primary parent, who was so attuned to your emotional needs that they noticed in the midst of the stress and whatever was going on in the household, did that primary parent notice that something was going wrong with you? Did they notice that you were feeling lots of things? And did they then take you out of the room and sit with you and ask if they could give you a hug and say to you, hey, little one, what are you feeling right now? Are you okay? I'm noticing that maybe you're not okay. What's going on? Tell me about it. I want to know. And then were you then able to say, yeah, I'm not okay right now? because of whatever's going on in their household, or maybe you're feeling a lack of safety. Yeah, I'm seeing in the comments, I could never say that I wasn't okay. And so were you able to say that? And was the parent then able to take the time and to then pause and to then validate your feeling? To say to you, I can really relate. And your feeling is absolutely accurate. And then did they nurture you and say, I'm here for you. I'm here to hold you. So notice, if that was the childhood you experienced, and if those were the primary parents that you were born into, that if that happened over and over again in your childhood, in your early childhood, and even when you were pre-verbal, if that's what was happening, you probably wouldn't be on this workshop right now. Because your system would have learned through this nurturing parent who was able to attune to you, your system would have learned that it's safe to allow these feelings, that it's safe to express these feelings, that it's safe to nurture myself when I'm experiencing these feelings, that it's safe for me to be in relationship when I'm feeling these feelings, that I'm safe. And then if my system had learned that throughout my life, moment by moment by moment, I would now be an adult who's processed all of the things that came up in the moments that they came up, and then I wouldn't have all that stuck stuff inside of me. So that's the idyllic scenario if we're checking in with our early childhood. I'm seeing here in the chat, never could say I wasn't okay. It was always, you should be happy. You should be grateful. Or Lynn says, I had to push emotions away. Fight or flight is my go-to, black and white reactions. Yeah, so maybe share in the comments here, was that the childhood you had, or was it a little bit different? Yeah, I'm seeing 100%. So what my childhood was more like, even though I loved my parents tremendously, and they did the absolute best they could, and then some, and they're tremendous people who cared so much about me and my siblings, but they didn't process their own traumas. They didn't process their own pains. They weren't a generation who had access to that. And so there were many ways that they weren't able to attune to my needs. So I have memories of sitting at the kitchen table when financial stress was hitting and not being okay. And I remember once my therapist asked, so did you ever get up on the table and scream out, I'm not okay, somebody help me? I was like, no. And she said, what'd you do instead? I said, I just bottled it up. I just went to my room. And she said, because you perceived that you weren't safe. You didn't feel safe. I'm noticing here. So I'm noticing here compassionate, but more of the toughen up mentality, right? Don't feel that, toughen up. It was never noticed until I was acting out so out of character and rebelling so much that my negative actions got attention. So what Sav is sharing is that that was one of the ways that I was able to actually get attention. That if she was actually in her feelings, in her deep and raw feelings, that she wasn't able to get loving attention, she actually needed to act out. I think that was true for a lot of us. Madeline says, I think I was able to always feel as a child. I think it was the outside sources, teachers and coaches sending other messages. Elise says, one parent empathized and one parent just wanted it to go away, which ended up feeling dismissive, like I needed to hide those feelings. And so just like Elise is sharing here, it didn't feel safe because our primary parents, from a trauma perspective, our primary family of origin was required to keep us safe. Quite literally, when we're young children, we can't take care of ourselves. We can't change our own diapers, we can't feed ourselves. And so we look at these people around us as the source of our safety, which is also the source of our love. And so if they were stressed and unable to attune to us, that then we experience that if I feel and I express what's genuinely happening inside of me, that's a negative emotion or something that might inconvenience them, or in the worst case scenarios, which I guarantee some people on here listening experience, because we know about the percentage of people who experience the big T traumas, right? Like the sexual, physical, or psychological abuse, divorce of a parent, loss of a parent, etc. Those are the big T traumas. Or the little T traumas, which is more the death by 1,000 cuts kind of traumas, that we learned that if I contributed to the family of origin energetically anything that wasn't convenient, that it had a backlash, that I wasn't safe, that I wouldn't get my needs met. And so our systems learned, like Elise is saying here, I ended up feeling dismissive, so I needed to hide those feelings. And then I become an adult who is afraid to share vulnerably my emotions because I'm afraid that I won't be deserving of love and belonging if I do share. And then I turn into a smaller version of myself that only allows the parts of myself that I believe will be deserving of love and belonging, and I hide away the rest of myself, and I'm wondering why I'm anxious. I'm anxious, and as Krista said at the beginning of this, I'm anxious because spiritually my soul, my being, is crying for me to be my full self in this world, unapologetically as I am. But my brain is saying I'm not safe to do that because it wasn't allowed, there wasn't space for me to do it as a young child. Jackie says I was always making a mountain out of a molehill, or that I wasn't feeling what I was feeling, or that I was overreacting. Megan says in my family, no one ever expressed emotions. Chase says absolutely, I couldn't vocalize because I always seemed to have it together, more than my siblings. That was the one that I got from my parents that I've heard. You always seemed to have it together, so you seemed fine. Had to be strong for them and not stressed. So, which, as Chase is saying, if you were the strong one, if you were the one who seemed to have it all together, one of the things that does is it really breeds a codependency in our attachment, which maybe almost 30 ladies, we do another workshop later about attachment and how these early childhood experiences created our attachment as in relationships as adults. But it certainly teaches us that I'm not safe to feel my feelings because I have to be the one that has it all together. And then I go into relationships as an adult where I'm not the one who's allowed to fall short. Right? I have to be the strong one, which again ignores my healing. It ignores my vulnerabilities. How are we doing timing wise? I think we have till 12 on this section. Adam says I was deemed over dramatic. Tough love. Yeah, I was told you're fine, Dana says. Madeline says, I also think my mom and dad would just help coach me out of the feelings. So in a way, they did suppress it, but also it was how they knew how to cope with it. Exactly. Okay, I want to keep reading these. I was praised for my parents were raised to not talk about negative emotions. Yep. I was praised for acting like everything was fine, that I was calm, that I could handle conflict when other siblings acted out. Love that you're sharing work suppressing can cause anxiety. I went from a house that didn't allow emotions to now corporate America is doing the same. Absolutely, Lynn. Alex says, whoa, spot on. Sav is loving the workshop. Alex, I was always blamed for problems with my step siblings and felt like I had to make myself small because of their sensitivities. Samantha says, I wanted my parents to like me so much I would just always put a smile on and cry in my room. Y'all, this is real. So everything you're sharing here, the world will try to invalidate. The world will try to say to you, buck up, kid. You're an adult now, get over it. What does your childhood have to do this? You're really bringing this up now? What I want to say to you is everything you're experiencing is valid. So I want you to check back in with what that experience was like for you as a young child. And take a deep breath. and allow yourself to feel that. Allow your heart to break open to that was what you were experiencing. And that is what set up your attachment. That's what set up your system from a very, very young age. And we are pretty much just reliving our childhood in bigger bodies with more money and maybe some more power and some more freedom. But we're pretty much just reliving all of that over and over again right now as adults until we go through these processes that we're going to be talking about today. Until we reparent ourselves, until we learn to nurture ourselves. The good news is that we can today learn to nurture our ways, nurture ourselves in the ways that our primary parents couldn't. And when we learn to nurture ourselves in our quote negative emotions, feeling however it is that we're feeling, we stop being avoidant and we start opening ourselves to feel them, and we start processing this stuff up and out. And we build a relationship with ourselves where we really do realize this primary relationship we have with ourselves can be the most beautiful, magnetic, spiritual, deep, kind, loving, compassionate relationship that we have. And when we do that with ourselves, we start stepping into other relationships where we meet and align with other people who have learned to do that for themselves. And now we can actually dance together. Yeah, it shifts us from having to be a small version of ourselves that only exposes a certain amount of ourselves, and that way we're safe, to I'm able and willing to communicate and express and feel all of myself, and so are you, but I've developed a foundation of fullness, even with my shadow, with my emotions, with the things that I believe are going to make me unlovable, and so are you, and now we can actually love the fullness of each other in my relationship, with my friendships, and dare I say, even with our coworkers. And this way we become agents of transformation on the planet. I think this is what we need. It's like my dear friend Azita always says, we don't need more light workers on the planet. We need more shadow workers. We need more people who are able and willing to hold space for our shadows. Okay, so how do we start going about doing this? I'm going to get into a practice in the second section of this workshop, but the first section I want to get into, and hopefully you all got the preparation email. You can tell me if you didn't in the comments and maybe we can take care of that. But hopefully you all got the email with this habit tracker. Did you all get this to print it out or to make your own? If you didn't, we'll figure that out. Yes, okay, good, I'm seeing you got it. You can also, I'm sure, hopefully you're taking notes as things are coming up for you. Chase didn't get it, so if we can get that to him, if Tiffany, you're watching, maybe we can get that to him. Regardless, Chase, you can take notes on this. So I want to make sure that every day we are setting up practices for ourselves to make sure that we're nurturing ourselves every day. So there are a list of practices, just like we started with our mind, body, spirit meditation, that I believe we need to be doing every single day and holding ourselves disciplined and accountable to doing them if we are to experience what it's like to nurture ourselves, to take care of ourselves. And I think sometimes I'm going to share what these practices are. They're pretty straightforward. The biggest word of daily practice is the daily part. Is building up a relationship with ourselves where we're in our integrity, when we're in a constant and consistent flow of taking care of ourselves. Some of these practices that I'm going to share, you're probably already doing, and some of them you're not. And that might be because those are more difficult for you, that you're better at certain than others. I'm going to share a well-rounded list of practices. each one of these serve a different purpose. Okay, so let's get into it. So practices for mind, body, spirit that I want to make sure that we're doing every single day. The first one is meditation. And I'm really going to simplify meditation, which might kind of make it more complex for you, because we want a system that works. We want an app, we want an audio, we want something to focus on, because we're really uncomfortable with just being with ourselves. So the style of meditation that I'm going to invite you into is not really a style at all. It's called sit your ass down on the couch, close your eyes, breathe, and don't get up for 20 minutes. Here's why. The thing that causes our anxiety, as I was talking about at the beginning of this workshop, is all the thinking that happens in our head when we're ignoring how we're feeling and we're thinking about our circumstances and what's not going well, etc. And part of our evolution as a species is a negativity bias and a intense focus on our thoughts about what could potentially go wrong at any moment. A Course in Miracles, which is a text I'm going to get into at the end of the workshop in the spirituality section of the workshop, says that the ego speaks first and the ego speaks loudest. The ego is the belief in our separation, which is the mind of fear, right? It's the thing that believes I'm a temporary, it's a thought system that believes I'm a temporary person, that I am this body, that I'm always at the threat of something that could go wrong. And it's hyper vigilant, looking for what could go wrong. And it serves thoughts consistently about what could possibly go wrong next. Where's the shoe going to drop? What's going to happen? What is he going to do? What if this happens? What if, right? Constant. The ego speaks first. The ego speaks loudest. Because these thoughts are habitual, we think a thought. Because we've been thinking about it over and over again, we believe the thought. And because we believe the thought immediately, we act on the thought. The acting on the thought could either be doing a behavior or avoiding doing something, procrastinating, moving away, right? It's either bringing us into doing something or moving us away. One of the things that's causing our overwhelm and our anxiety consistently is that we're just consistently believing the first thought and acting on that first thought constantly. In meditation, because I've made a commitment to not get up for 20 minutes, I sit, I close my eyes, the thought happens, I probably believe the thought, but because I'm not getting up, I don't act on the thought. That's how simply I want you to think about meditation right now. Yeah, I'm still going to think the thought. I'll probably believe the thought, but because I don't get up, I don't act on the thought. So the third step goes away. Yeah. Jenny is saying, I love how you broke that down. I'm trying to take things really simply here, because you know what? The truth is simple. It's the ego that overcomplicates things. So I don't act on the thought. If I do this every single day, I'm going to suggest 20 minutes when we wake up in the morning, every day. Over time, what will happen in our waking life, in our moving life, in our work life, in our relational life, because I practiced it in our meditation, I think the thought, I might believe the thought, but I don't act on the thought. I'm not so quick to act and react to my thoughts all the time, which then gives me the space in the moment, instead of thinking the thought, believing it, and acting on it, which is called reacting. Instead, I think the thought, I don't act on the thought, then I have some room to start to question the thought. Then I have the room to start becoming aware. What am I feeling? What's going on inside of me? But before I even have the space to be, I have to become aware. And that happens through meditation, okay? So if you do have your habit tracker, My recommendation is that right in this first line underneath habit, you write 20-minute meditation. Go for it. And then we have 3 more commitments that we're making each day, which will round out this first section of the workshop. The second commitment that I'm asking you to make every day, we must be using our physical energy. I believe that every day we have a certain quota of amount of energy that we need to use. It's like there's fuel in our tank and we need to use it. And I think what tends to happen is we use so much psychological energy all the time, thinking, that by the end of the day, we experience ourselves as exhausted, but we haven't actually used our physical resources, our physical energy system. And I think that all of that energy inside of us increases our anxiety levels. And so the second thing I'm going to ask everyone to be doing every day is to do something that is fitness-oriented, dance-oriented every day for 30 minutes. And so you write down here, whatever that is for you, workout or dance, on the second line, 30 minutes. We have to use our physical energy every day. I know that seems so obvious, but if you really ask the question, like, am I doing that every day? Maybe some of you are super committed to it, but maybe you're not super committed to the meditation. So see how these things serve for different things. The third commitment I'm asking you to do is, if you're starting your day with meditation, a dropping in, a being present, right, this practice, it's probably safe to say we need another practice similar to that toward the ending of our day. Not bedtime, but toward the ending of our kind of work, responsibility, masculine, going, doing, thinking, taking care of others, doing our work. We need something to shift out of that hyper masculine doing mode into our more feminine, receiving, relaxing mode. And we're so hyper trained in the masculine that we really need to make sure we're doing something to switch into our more feminine receiving gear, to down level the amount of the accumulated stress we've been experiencing all day. A great analogy for this is, if you went for a hike and you walked through and it was like there was dirt or mud or whatever, and you went for a hike and you got sweaty. Yeah, you got sweaty on this hike. When you came home, would you like get into bed with all that sweat and dirt on you? No. That sweat and dirt accumulated on your body, and so you would take a shower. You would do something to clean off that accumulated stuff. And so I'm going to suggest that when you finish your workday, or your whatever your workday consists of, your daytime consists of, that might be children or work, creative, whatever, taking care of people, that you do something to wash off the energy of the day. If you don't, that accumulated stress is going into tomorrow with you. And then again, accumulates. And then I wonder why I'm so anxious. So I'm calling this third one that you can write down on the third line, we're calling it goddess time. If you're a male or a female, it's goddess time. It's a time to drop into my feminine, my receptivity. My preference with that is a bath, 20-minute bath every single day. You may or may not have access to a bath. And so it's up to you. So I have 2 bathrooms here, both of them are showers. So what I do is I take a shower, I let the water run off of me, I feel myself releasing, and then I go into a second meditation. Sometimes I go to the ocean and I jump in the ocean and I lay on the sand and just lay there. It's about doing nothing. It's about turning off your technology, yeah, and being with yourself. Remember, just like in meditation, your thoughts are going to happen. They're going to try to distract you. They're going to try to pull you into doing X, Y, and Z. Your job is to, when you're in that bathtub and your head says, oh God, I forgot to send that email. You don't get out of the water. You stay. You stay more committed to yourself than to that responsibility in that moment. Unless the house is burning down, unless you're under real physical stress, physical duress, lack of safety, you don't come out of your meditation, you don't get out of the bathtub. The fourth piece is becoming conscious of how much water you're drinking. Drinking, the recommendation is half of your body weight in pounds in ounces. To clear energy, to clear the lymphatic system, to encourage toxins to leave the body. And then to be paying attention to the food that you're putting in your body. This is your fuel. Your emotional energy is also in direct correlation to how clean, how healthy is the fuel, is the gasoline that you're putting in your tank. So I would write on line 4, water, and line 5, I write, this is how I do it, clean eating. And what you do is are we in May? We're in May. So you write the month of May up here, and then you'll see the day. And every time you complete a task here, you cross it off, cross it off, cross it off. And then print another one of these for the next month and the following month and the following month, and give yourself the joy of crossing these things off and making sure that you're doing them every single day. Okay. Those are the baseline necessities to take care of your system so that you stand a chance to, this is like the baseline, what's needed practically, so that you stand a chance to do the practice that we're going to talk about in the next section. I just want to read your comments really quickly. I love how you broke that down. I want to play this over and over. Thank you, Garrett, you're welcome. I'm a meditation teacher training, and this is the best case to meditate I've heard. Amanda, I get it. I've been teaching meditation a long time, and it's important to explain it in a way that is practical, because it is practical. One huge struggle of mine, flowing from masculine and feminine. So Melina really doubled down on that bath time, on that healing time, on that goddess time. It's not easy. It's something we're really not used to. Water is incredible healing. Okay, great. Okay, so we're 5 minutes behind, which, by the way, y'all, for me, that is solid. And I believe we're going to begin our break. So Lindsay and Krista, are you here?
Yes.
Oh,
I'm still zenned out from the meditation. It's been like a beautiful journey. So thank you so much. And seeing your guys' comments has been profound. We'll take a break. So we'll meet back here at 12:10 Pacific. And I suggest getting up, shaking around a little bit, maybe jumping, getting some water, going to the restroom, just moving your body a little bit so you feel really, really, really good when you sit back down and we start the rest of the afternoon. Remember to do the questions in the Q&A box. We will have those at the end. So if you have anything you want to ask Ryan or want help with, I would suggest putting them in there.
We'll see you in 5 minutes.
See you in 5 minutes.
Bye, y'all.
Welcome back, everyone. We'll give you just a moment.
We have a poll going, which you guys can see. You guys are participating in. It's so interesting to see where everyone's at.
And sometimes I feel that like 5 out of 10, that kind of like hum of anxiety that's like always there, but it's not like at a full 10, is almost like harder for me to deal with sometimes. You know, because it's like you can't quite grasp what it is, where it's coming from. And then my tendency is to kind of normalize it and just kind of expect it. And then I'm not prone to do as much about it, if that makes sense. But so interesting. How about you?
Where am I today?
Mm-hmm.
Feel really good.
Yeah.
Feel really good. I think it was a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. It was probably the worst it's been in a long time. And it's funny because it's always when I'm out of touch with the feeling that it comes back, you know? It's like when you're like, oh, what is anxiety? I don't know her. And then it's like, I'm here. I'm here and I'm here to remind you. But yeah, it was bad. But today I feel really good. The meditations helped me so much. And for me, it's really, my anxiety was really helped by therapy, but also by just getting really, really clear on my intentions of what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, who I am, and what I'm about. So that really helped. What about you?
Yeah, today I'm feeling really good. But yeah, kind of same with you, where my anxiety visits me in waves. And like I said before, like I kind of get frustrated when it shows up. But it's been really helpful to be able to communicate it to whether it's a therapist or people that I love, so that I don't feel like I'm hiding it. Or for me, the talking about it really helps the energy move. So that's been really helpful. But with meditation coupled with that is like for me going outside. So it's like I feel so lucky to be able to go outside here in LA, you know, safely, but that really does help me. All right. So we will welcome Ryan back on. And you all have been so great in the comments. Continue to connect in any way that you'd like. Love hearing from you. We'll be right here.
We also see some questions in the Q&A.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for those. So make sure to just put all your questions in there for our time at the end.
Yeah. So around 12:55, 1 o'clock, we will come back and we'll do some Q&A. So be sure to add those. But Rye, we'll let you take it away.
Well, before you two leave me and us, you know, I know you're not going anywhere. One of the things you just said, Lindsay, around like the 5 out of 10 anxiety, I think that's something a lot of people experience, myself included. And this text that I'm a big student of, which is the Course in Miracles, it actually talks about how the mind of the ego doesn't really want us in a 10 out of 10 pain all the time, because we're far more likely to actually do something about it. So it would rather keep us in this kind of relatively low to mid-level hum of anxiety, hum of disconnection, hum of doubt. It would rather keep us there because we're far less likely to do something about it, which means that kind of our small self, our fearful self, our anxious self will remain in more control of us when we don't do something about it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes. So I found times in my life that I've made the most change have been when I've been at the 10 of 10 pain, 10 of 10 anxiety, 10 of 10 problems. So, you know, I've even found anxiety to be helpful in that way when it gets so bad that it causes me to make a shift or a profound transformation that I didn't want to make on my own, but was forced by, you know, being at that 10 out of 10. So I completely see that.
Yeah. And what I love about that, and what I really hope that everyone's hearing here, is that perspective shift around anxiety, that it's something that's calling for a change. It's calling for, A Course in Miracles also says we're to look at everything as either love or a call for love. Anything that seems to be lacking that love, that connection, that peace within us is actually calling for love. It's places within us that are calling for our love and our attention, which is what we're going to get into in this next section.
Wonderful.
Perfect.
All right, y'all. We'll see you in a bit.
Cool. So I'm seeing here, Melina says, I agree with that completely. I had to be pushed to the edge to seek out the tools like these. Yeah. There's another piece here that I want to share with those of us who are, you're here for a reason. And I really acknowledge, I saw in the poll, some people are experiencing the 7 out of 10, the 10 out of 10. One of the teachings that I've really come to embrace is that when we walk these paths toward our spiritual development, our personal growth, our healing, it can really seem like things get worse before they get better. And what A Course in Miracles says about this is they're not getting worse. It's just that because now we're waking ourselves up to truth and to practice and to more self-awareness, it seems like things are getting worse because we used to be anesthetized to how bad they were. We used to be asleep. We used to be more numb. We were less awake. We were less in our sensory. We were less in our feeling. We were less in our awareness. And so things didn't affect us as much. And now that our awareness is turning on and we're taking better care of ourselves and we're really waking up to ourselves, waking up to our spiritual self, it'll seem like things are getting worse before they get better. So I just want to call that out. Okay, so we have until about 12:35. And in this section, we're going to go over this 1-minute practice, this 1-minute tool to help us process in moments of anxiety and overwhelm. Also, Henry wants to say hi. This is my anti-anxiety tool right here. So then we're also going to get into a practice of setting boundaries after that. So this 1-minute tool, what I'm about to share with you is very, very simple, but in practice, it will likely be very, very confusing, challenging for a while. And that's because what I'm going to ask us to do in this practice is 180 degrees, or the polar opposite from how we're trained. So I mentioned before, when we're experiencing anxiety and overwhelm, we typically try to think our way out of it. We try to figure out a solution. And it's like we're seeking a solution, but we'll never really find one, because the only solution, as we've talked about, is digging into how am I feeling and what do I need? What does this wounded place inside of me need right now? So my button's getting pushed by the situation. I try to come up with how to solve the situation, but the real issue isn't the situation. The real issue is that it pushed a button, but it didn't give me the button. I've had this button here, which is why the situation or the person was able to push the button. This isn't the first time I'm feeling this way. Therefore, the problem is not the situation. The issue that I want to focus on is, what is the button that's getting pushed for me? And how do I turn my attention away from the thoughts about what's going on into what is happening inside of me? How do I nurture myself inside of me? Okay. And so for this tool, it's a 1-minute tool. And as I mentioned before, when you start to use it, it might seem confusing. It might seem like it lacks power. But what I promise is that if you practice this over and over and over again, this is going to become a spiritual North Star for you that is, I can say with confidence, more powerful than anything else. There's a lot of stuff out there in the spiritual world that can get us to leave our feelings, to avoid them, to only think positively. And a lot of that stuff means well and is really useful in some ways, but it also causes us to continue avoiding what's going on inside, and it's very disempowering. So this 1-minute tool has 3 steps. So here I am. So you may want to, well, let me go over it first and then we'll go through the practice. So I'm in a moment of anxiety and overwhelm. Something's happening at work, something's happening in my relationship, somebody's saying something to me that is triggering me. I'm thinking something about myself that's unkind, like about my body or about my money or about my abilities or whatever. I'm in a moment of anxiety. Okay, here I am. As soon as I recognize that I'm having a moment, step one, 3 deep breaths. So let's take a deep breath. Deep belly breath. Relax your breathing. Step one is 3 deep breaths. Simple. What we know about taking 3 deep breaths is it moves us from a stress or a trauma response when we're in this triggered moment and trying to figure out what's going on and the alarm is ringing inside of our mind. And as we learned about in on-site, this sheet goes up that separates us from our prefrontal or our rational thought and puts us into a more subconscious fear, fight, or flight reaction. Just 3 deep breaths can help to just turn off the alarm a little bit while we connect with ourselves. So step one is 3 deep breaths. It can shift our neurology. It can shift us from a fight or flight mode into a more present, rational place. Step one, 3 deep breaths. Step two, say to yourself 3 times, I am safe, I am safe, I am safe. Okay, so you take 3 deep breaths. You say to yourself, you tell your body, you tell yourself, you may close your eyes through this whole process, and you say to yourself, I am safe, I am safe, I am safe. And then step 3, I get inquisitive about how am I feeling? What is happening inside of me? What am I feeling? And I allow myself to feel it. So step 1, 3 deep breaths. Step 2, mantra, I am safe. Step 3, connect with my feeling. So I literally ask myself, how am I feeling? What am I feeling? And I affirm, I allow myself to feel it. Okay? So let's go through this practice right now. So I want you to visit the moment. Maybe it happened today. Maybe it happened last week. Maybe it happened yesterday. Visit the moment that you last experienced anxiety. So let's all close our eyes. Visit the moment when you last had that irk of anxiety, when that button got pushed. Notice what you're thinking about yourself, about the other people involved, and notice how you reacted. So notice what you were thinking and how you were probably spinning into those thoughts. Just notice. And now we're going to go into this practice as if that moment is the present moment. So in the midst of this anxiety, of this overwhelm, of this panic, what do we do first? Take 3 deep breaths. So with the eyes closed, you may even put a hand on your heart. Take 3 deep breaths. To breathe deep belly breaths, deep inhales and deep exhales. 3 deep breaths. Go ahead. Filling yourself with air and letting it all go. Again, filling yourself with air and letting it all go. After your 3rd deep breath, relax the breathing. Again, with the eyes closed, we say to ourselves, step 2, I am safe. We could say it out loud if no one's around, or if we feel better about saying it quietly to ourselves. We say, I am safe. I am safe. I am safe. And now we ask, How do I feel? What is happening inside of me? And you notice the base feelings. Is it sadness? Is it fear? Is it anger? Is it resentment? Is it jealousy? How do I feel? And once you've identified even just one word that represents how you feel, I want you to now say to yourself, I allow myself to feel this, and then insert with that feeling word. I allow myself to feel this. Keep your breath moving and just stay here and simply say to yourself, I allow myself to feel, and take a deep breath. So as simple as I allow myself to feel this sadness, or I allow myself to feel this fear, or I allow myself to feel this jealousy. I allow myself to feel. Okay. So let's take a deep breath in and let it go. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And I'd love for you to share with the group, I allow myself to feel, and whatever that base emotion is. So Brooke shared, I allow myself to feel vulnerable. I allow myself this fear of not being in control. Notice, we're not trying to fix the feeling. We're not invalidating the feeling. We're not saying I shouldn't feel. We're just simply allowing the feeling to be here. As you're sharing, why are we doing this? So share this in the comments. Why are we doing this? Because we are becoming the parent that we talked about earlier, who sat with us and helped us to feel safe to feel the feelings that are arising. So Elise says, I allow myself to feel frustrated. And Madeline says, I allow myself to feel unaccepted. I allow myself to feel unheard. I allow myself to feel uncomfortable. That's a good one. Yes. Samantha says, I'm allowed myself to feel resentment and fear. Chase, I allow myself to feel the fear of being lesser than, the fear of being inadequate. Jackie, I allow myself to feel sadness. I allow myself to feel fear. I allow myself to feel hopelessness. Adam, I allow myself to feel overwhelmed. Taylor, I allow myself to feel uncertain. I allow myself to feel afraid of uncertainty. Dana, I allow myself to feel confused. I allow myself to feel unsteady in the face of the unknown, Nicole says. Sav says, I allow myself to feel inadequate, of never being enough. Amanda, I allow myself to feel misunderstood and not in control. Thank you, everyone, for your vulnerability here. So we allow ourselves to feel. So the goal here, the practice here, is any time that we are in an anxious moment, we move from our thoughts to the simplicity of our feelings. This may seem so basic, and that's because it is. It may also seem in the moment that that's not what's needed, and I promise you, that it's always what's needed, is the simplicity to move from what I'm thinking to have an awareness and a holding space for how I'm feeling. Let's take a deep breath. So what we're doing every time we do that is we're creating a grounded and safe space inside of ourselves to feel what needs to be felt. Remember, emotions are energy in motion, so they want to move. They want to move through us. When we resist them, when we deny them, when we ignore them by thinking about our thoughts, which is very tricky. The reason this practice is so simple is the head can get really tricky. To those of us who are unpracticed in feeling our thoughts and feeling our feelings, which is everyone on here based on this family of origin, the head can really convince us that we're feeling our feelings, when in reality, we're really thinking about our feelings. So the head tells stories, I'm feeling mad because he did this, and because this didn't work out, and because da 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 da, and those are my feelings. Or I'm feeling that he doesn't listen to me. That's a thought. Anytime the feeling word has more than just a couple words, anytime there's a full sentence, right? I'm feeling blah, 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 because blah, 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 blah. Those are no longer feelings. Those are beliefs. Those are thoughts. And what I'm asking you to do is to get into the sensory, somatic experience of your feelings. Once we have established this safe and grounded, nurturing place inside of ourselves, now we can go out there and establish what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate in our life and in our relationships. And it comes from a place of self-care, and we call these boundaries. And so really quickly, we're going to get into this conversation about boundaries. How we typically think about boundaries is we typically think that boundaries are like walls that we build to keep people out. While that's true, there's another way to look at, oh, I love this. So there's a poll that just came up from the ladies. How disciplined are you in your self-care practices? So let's go ahead and share in those polls. And you can do that based on the list that I offered you in terms of all those things that balance us. We need each one of those. So I'm loving this. One practice every day, 6 or 7 of us currently. One practice every few days is slightly fewer. Right now, no one's at never. It's totally okay to be vulnerable and share that if it's never for you. And most of us are practicing multiple practices a day. Great. Awesome. Powerful group. Okay. So as we move into this next area of boundaries, the way I like to think about boundaries is, instead of thinking about boundaries as things that keep people out, I like to think about boundaries as this. Okay, so here's me. This is the energy that is me. And I build a boundary. I build this wall around me. Let's say it's 10 feet out all around me. And that what that wall serves, instead of focusing on the intention of that wall to keep people out, instead I focus on this boundary is like a container. It's like a fence. And inside of it, I am responsible for the energy that fills this space around me. And so this boundary serves to hold space for how I choose to be, what I choose to experience. So this boundary, instead of thinking about keeping people out, it's about keeping space in that is intentional for how I choose to live. So it's more focused on what do I want as opposed to what do I don't want. Okay? And so in the knowing of that, if what I'm committed to in my life is vulnerability and healing and respect and dignity and cherishing and self-awareness, and I every day through my daily practices of meditation, of spirituality, maybe of prayer, of my working out, of my nurturing myself with healthy foods, I'm filling this energy around me with the energy that I'm committed to having in my space around me, in my field around me. And then someone comes in or an opportunity comes in. It could be a work opportunity or a relational thing or a friend or an acquaintance or someone that I don't even know could come into that field. And if I notice that what they're requesting of me serves along the lines of the energy inside my boundaries that I'm committed to, then it's a yes to me, and I can welcome that person in or that opportunity in. If it aligns with my desires, my wants, how I choose to take care of myself, how I'm choosing to live in the world. But what a boundary also recognizes is that everyone has their own highly individualized curriculum in this world, including family members, that everyone is in their development where they are. And instead of judging that, we can see it as discernment. Some people dive into their trauma and their pain and heal their hurt, and so that they don't project it onto others. And some people don't or haven't yet. Okay? And so I am responsible to take care of my garden. And if something comes into that space that's not in alignment with how I'm choosing to live, and they make a request of me, I utilize this boundary by saying no. No, thank you. This isn't in alignment with how I'm choosing to live, with where I'm taking my life, with where I'm taking my work, with where I'm taking my money, with where I'm taking my relationships. Thank you, but no thank you. And so by saying no to you, I'm saying yes to me. This can be really, really challenging. And it's a beautiful and powerful practice. If I'm having a challenging time setting a boundary with someone, it's really important that I go through the practice that we just did, that 1-minute tool of checking in with when I'm thinking about the challenge of setting this boundary and what's going to happen or what are they going to think, what do? There's probably a feeling, there's definitely a feeling that's needing to be felt here. There's something going on inside of me. There's some kind of trauma, there's some kind of pain, there's some kind of fear, there's some kind of worry, there's some kind of doubt that's pulling me out of my alignment. So what do I want to do? Check in, take a deep breath, 3 deep breaths, remind myself that I'm safe, and check in with how I'm feeling. Nurture myself, remind myself that I'm allowed to feel. I'm allowed to feel this. It's important that I feel this. And then become aware again. Okay, it is within my power, it is within my discernment to take care of this space around me. And if you're going to join in taking care of this space around me with your awareness and your actions and your words and your deeds, then you can come in, then you're a yes. But if you can't, then that's a no. I'm seeing here, Jenny says, I've had so many boundary tests with this week with my partner and friends at work. Yeah, we are responsible for ourselves. And those of us who I said before err more toward the side of codependency, more anxious attachment styles, it's really hard for us to set those boundaries. Melina says, this is such a great way to bring the power back to yourself. By being in this quarantine time, I've been so much better able to see how in normal life my boundaries are not there, which makes me feel out of my own power. Yeah, part of our attachment stuff is we have a tendency to be disempowered in saying yes to people and things that don't align with what we're really intending, what we're really choosing. As Krista said at the beginning of this, one of the things that's really helped her with her anxiety is becoming really clear, what are my intentions? Who do I really want to be? And if where I'm going is a vision of who I want to be and what I want to do and what I want to create, it's very likely that that's different from where I am now, what I'm doing now, and what I've been in the past. So it's going to feel really challenging to say no to the things that aren't, say no to those things right now. This is off topic from anxiety, but, and again, we could do a manifestation workshop on this, is I believe that if we really want to move toward the life that we're actually committed to, manifestation isn't just about visioning and saying yes, it's also about saying no to the things that are coming at me right now that are out of alignment with where I want to go, okay? So the future me depends on the boundaries that I set up right now. Even though it feels like if I say no to this thing that maybe nothing will come in its space, listen, the universe don't like a vacuum. The universe does not like a vacuum. The universe will fill the space, and if I fill the space prematurely with things, people, relationships, situations, opportunities that are out of alignment with where I want to go, then that space is already full and can't be filled by what I actually want. It's hard to have boundaries with parents. Samantha, you're absolutely right. And the more you go through that practice of feeling your feelings and nurturing yourself inside of those feelings, that process is called reparenting yourself. The more you become aware of what it is that you're feeling, then the more you become aware of what it is that you need, and then the more you'll be able to communicate those boundaries. Brooke says, when I was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic cancer, I can never say that word, cancer, I experienced a surge of people wanting to visit, but many of them were not in alignment with my healing. I struggled to set those boundaries. This is a perfect tool for discernment. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Brooke. Talk about a time when you need your boundaries to focus on how do I take care of me? One of the things that we tend to do is we tend to think about, what does everyone else need? Even if I'm abandoning my own needs. And so in this time when, Brooke, you're talking about your stage 4 cancer and people were wanting to kind of come in all the time, this heightened reality, you had to struggle to set those boundaries when what was important is, what do I need right now? And if that doesn't align with other people's needs, I choose myself first. I choose myself first. A big cause of anxiety is how we consistently put other needs before our own. What we're doing when we do that is we're saying to ourselves, you don't matter, 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 they matter more than you. The primary relationship we need to have is the one we have with ourselves. We must put ourselves first. Nicole says in one of her posts on Instagram, Elizabeth Gilbert talks about how many of us are experiencing a block in creativity and a rise in anxiety because we're not quarantining enough. I really love Ryan's analogy of protecting our sacred garden. Jackie says, this past year I've had to say no to several people who unfortunately do not align with what I want to surround myself with. It is definitely hard to say no, especially when you have an attachment to that person, but I felt so much more safe after I did. Melina says, please do a manifestation workshop. We can do that. Samantha, you're supposed to just put up with family. Well, so Samantha, that's a belief that you're supposed to just put up with your family. And that's a belief that's ingrained in many of our family systems. I would encourage you to question that belief if it's out of alignment with taking care of yourself. And it may feel like a little while, part of doing this work is kind of letting go of the way we've been attached to certain relationships. And that's going to be painful and confusing, and it can really upset the apple cart. And part of taking care of ourselves is getting grounded, even though that apple cart is getting upset. What I've noticed in my path is that as I take care of myself, it does upset those relationships. And then I continue taking care of myself and continue taking care of myself. And pretty often, if not 100% of the time, those relationships come back healthier. And now those people know how to be with us because we've set up a boundary that says, You don't get to be with me that way. That doesn't work. Chase says it's so difficult to execute this in the current quarantine time because I find often that what feels comfortable does not also necessarily promote growth or forward movement. Yeah. There's nothing more uncomfortable than our comfort zone, So growing up and out of that, the head will always keep us in our comfort zone. The heart will always encourage us to expand and to move. So one of the ways that I talk about this is life is a constant forward motion. So see, I'm grabbing my shirt. Life is a forward motion that's always pulling us forward, like there's a bungee cord that's pulling us forward. As we move forward, the head that's afraid of growth and change gets us to dig our heels in the sand, like, no, I don't want to change. But then life keeps pulling us. But our trauma, our pain, our fear gets us to push our heels into the ground. Meanwhile, life is pulling us toward what we actually want in our hearts, in our souls. And we get our heads get us to dig our heels in the ground to stop that forward motion. And then life keeps pulling and tugging, and that tension can grow so intense that it actually builds more anxiety, more stress. And so at a certain point, we actually have to surrender. That's again why we have these daily practices of meditation and taking the bath, because it will nurture us in that surrender. Madeline, I have literally lived the majority of my 20s without boundaries. And the last year and a half, I've been figuring out how to get myself into a routine and understanding my why. I had completely abandoned my own needs, and that is inherited both of my parents. That is inherited probably by both of my parents. They put their kids above themselves all the time to this day. Any parents out there, I say this in my group coachings and in my one-on-one coaching all the time. I always remind parents, one of the healthiest things you can do with your kids is to let them see you and the ways you take care of yourself. So to say to a kid who can understand, 5, 6, 7 and older, this is when dad goes and takes a bath. And this is when you occupy yourself, or you go be with your other parent or your sibling. And this is when mom or dad takes time to take care of ourselves, because it's really important that I take care of myself. And to show a child, a parent that does that is very impactful. Brooke says, so helpful. You're welcome. Dana, I have boundaries with my mom because I learned I can only talk to her about certain things. Gotta take care of yourself. Makes you think of the topic on Dana. Sure. I have boundaries with my mom because I can only, topic of reassurance. Brooke, you said when we prioritize other people's needs before our own, this is a sign of codependency, because as a child, we needed to make sure our parents were okay so they could help us survive. Exactly. So in our early childhood homes, again, in times we have no memories of, even like when we're pre-verbal, little babies, if there was a lot of stress and tension and things going on inside of the home, for whatever reason, and I noticed that was keeping mom, for example, away from taking full care of me, then I would learn that it's my job to make her happy, right? So I goo-goo and I gaga and I laugh and I do things to make her happy so that she can pay attention to me to make sure that I get fed and I get my needs met, which means that we can learn at a very young age, in order to get my needs met, I take care of others. So there's a real twistedness to all of that. So that's the piece on our 1-minute practice and our boundaries. I want to look at our timing. It's 12:51. Okay. So we've cut into our last section before the Q&A. I'm going to just do a really quick chit chat with y'all right now about the spiritual component of this. There's a line in A Course in Miracles that says, I am not my body, I am free. It says, I am as God created me. I like to use the word, the universe, the source. From a spiritual perspective, and this is every wisdom tradition, every spiritual path teaches the same thing, which is that who I really am can't be threatened. Who I really am, therefore, is never anxious. Who I really am is grounded in the present moment. Who I really am is an everlasting energy. So A Course in Miracles says that we're alive in these bodies to walk a path of enlightenment. And that defines enlightenment as a process, a path, a process, an unfolding process of shifting. Stay with me here. Enlightenment is the process of shifting my identification meaning who I believe I am. Enlightenment is the process of shifting my identification from I am my body to I am spirit. Of shifting my identification. So we were born into this world believing or being taught that we are our bodies, we are our personalities, we are how much money we have in the bank account, we are our successes and our failures, we are our name. This is me. And this me lives, as I said at the beginning, for a certain amount of time. And this me, this physical me, can also be threatened. I can get hurt, cut, wounded, right? I can be threatened. Opportunities can be taken from me. A relationship can go away that I really want. This me can be threatened. A Course in Miracles says that enlightenment is the shift from believing that this is the me that can be threatened to the awareness, to the identification that I am what the Course calls spirit or energy. So here's an analogy of how I like to think about this. Maybe you have a car, and when you want to go somewhere, you open the door to the car, you get into the car, you look out the windows, you tell it where you want to go, to the right or to the left, with your hands on the steering wheel. You tell it how fast or how slow with your foot on the pedals, your feet on the pedals, or maybe just one foot on the pedals. So you tell it where you want to go, how fast or how slow, and you drive this vehicle. And this vehicle moves you through Earth, moves you through the physical world. My question is, have you ever identified as your car? Have you ever believed I am a car? Have you ever really believed I am this car? So you can see where I'm going here. But meanwhile, we come into these bodies every morning when we wake up. We see out the windshield of our eyes. We tell this body where to go, how fast or how slow, to the left or to the right. And this body is a vehicle through which I move through and experience through my senses, sight, taste, touch, right? I experience this physical world. And meanwhile, the world in which we're born tells us, I am this body, which is the equal belief to I am that car. When the reality is, I am not the car, I use the car. The car is a mode of transportation for me. So too, I use this body. This body is a mode of transportation for me. And by the way, that doesn't discount how amazing this body is. This machine, this body, this version of me, this embodiment is a miracle that thinks and breathes and digests foods and speaks and listens and swims and is an amazing gift. And it is, as A Course in Miracles calls it, it is a tool for our learning. This body is a tool for our unfolding. But that I am not the body, that's not what I am. I am that which utilizes this body. The source of our anxieties, if we really were to get into it, is that we believe we are our bodies. And because our bodies can be threatened, we're always anxious and afraid of what could potentially happen to it. So from a spiritual perspective, as we shift our awareness from I am my body to I am spirit, through meditation, through prayer, through spiritual practice, through yoga, through whatever our disciplined practice, and I'm talking about every day, every day, every day. What we start to realize is, as the Course in Miracles says, the whole text can be defined, or the whole text can be summed up in 3 sentences, which is nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. As I said, we're going into a spiritual vortex spin here. Nothing real can be threatened. My real self can't be threatened. My true self isn't at the effect of what's going on. And so through my spiritual studies, I connect with, I tap into this self. And I do that through all these practices I talked about, and also then through this space to feel our feelings. Madeline says, mic drop. And either Chris or Lindsay say, what a relief. That truth is so powerful. So when I'm in an anxious moment, I am inherently forgetting who I am. When I connect to the energy of my feelings, I connect deeply to the energy of what I am, and I begin more and more to remember who I am. So before we go into Q&A, last couple reminders I want to make sure that you remember here is, once you have filled this out, please, and any other practices you want to make sure you're committing to every day, put this somewhere that you can see it every single day. Mine says on my desk right here. It stays on my desk, and every morning I cross off the things as I do them. And then reminder that those are the practices that will set up a foundation so that you'll notice during the day when you're in an anxious moment, oh, this is a moment to do what? 3 deep breaths. Say it with me. 3 deep breaths. I am safe 3 times. And check in with what am I feeling, and allow myself to feel that. I guarantee if you do that over and over and over again, that we could have a reunion a year from now, and the level of transformation that will happen through those simple things will be so profound. Elise, and then we'll go into questions and answers right now. And so I don't know, ladies, do you want to come on for that? Or y'all kind of like going to moderate the questions and answers? While they're coming on, Elise says, nothing unreal exists. It's such an amazing thing to remind yourself in the midst of anxiety spiral. Garrett says, how about 6 months? Great, I'm down. Sarah says, how do you work on staying consistent with those practices, even when dealing with depression and lack of motivation? So thank you for asking this. Thank you for asking this. One of the things that I forgot to mention about this is, if it was easy for us to hold ourselves accountable to self-care practices, we would be doing it. So one of the biggest reasons that I offer these group coaching experiences that I offer is because we have this group, and every single day we hold each other accountable to our practices. And we share with the group what's challenging for us and what we're resisting, and we relate to each other, and we hold each other accountable to these practices. So if you join something like a group coaching of mine, or you hire a coach, or you could even, if that's not an option for you, you could always just like phone a friend and say, these are the commitments that I'm committed to every day. Could you help hold me accountable? Can I check in with you when I'm avoiding, right? So get the support that you need. When you're dealing with depression and lack of motivation, we're not really able to heal on our own. We need a sense of community to be seen, just like this chat box is helping us with, to be validated in our experiences, to be validated in our feelings, and to be seen. Sav says, would love a future workshop on codependency. Oh, I'll say one other thing about this. This is not a thing that we're using to help ourselves feel guilty. So if we're committed to doing a certain practice and we miss it, we don't do it, that's not a reason to then go into the guilt and shame spiral, although that can be very easy to spin there. Henry, honey, not right now, thank you. My watchdog. That we be really kind with ourselves. Sav would love a future workshop on codependency. How do we let go of resentment felt towards parents for lack of nurturing and safety to be and feel as a child? Yeah, how do we let go of that resentment? Well, firstly, it's not about letting go of the resentment. It's about feeling the resentment. It's about letting yourself feel that pain. It's about letting yourself hold space to feel the hurt, the lack of nurturing. So there's a lot of conversation about letting go of pains and hurts. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to let it go. The only way, in my opinion, to let it go is to feel it, is to create space to feel it. And then to communicate with your parents about it. That's a whole other workshop, is a communication workshop. How do you talk about these things non-violently so that people can actually hear you? But that's a whole other 2-hour thing. Hey, ladies.
Hello.
Hi, Rye. Wow. Thank you so much. How's everyone feeling? Your questions are so good. We're going to get into Q&A in just a second.
Just honoring you for sharing so vulnerably and openly, and just being willing to, mindfully look at yourself and look at the way that you show up and have the desire for change, because that's huge. So the awareness is major. We are so grateful. The questions are great. So if you haven't, please submit a question in the Q&A box. Lindsay and I are going to be manning that and feeding Ryan the questions. We have about 20 right now. We are wrapping at 1:30, so we will try to get through as many as possible. So let's get started.
All right, this is from Anonymous. Any suggestions for balancing the masculine and feminine throughout the day as well, especially as a business owner? I find that it's tough to strike the balance of being authoritative yet also personable.
This is my life. This is my life question.
Yeah, it's a huge one. So firstly, if you are in a masculine energy the majority of the day, which by the way, most of us are, even if we don't work, anytime we're nurturing other people, we're in a masculine energy. I know that seems like it's feminine because it seems like motherly to nurture people. It's actually a masculine energy. When I am doing something, it's actually a masculine energy. The focus is going out there as opposed to in here. Focus in here is feminine. It's a sense of receiving and relaxation and a space for self. And then when I'm out in the world, right? So again, feminine is receiving, is connecting to my inner world, my channel, my inside self. Masculine is, okay, then taking that energy that I've received and then putting it out there. So suggestions for balancing, if you're a business owner who's in that kind of energy all day, yeah, you better spend a considerable amount of time before you go into work mode in that sense of receiving, in that sense of self-care. There's a reason that, in the world of wellness, there's like every bath bomb and loofah and like candle and incense. That stuff works to create a ritual setting to experience taking care of yourself. So I would make sure that I'm doing that before I go into work mode. And then throughout the day, you can even set reminders on your phone that go off every hour, for example, as like a practical thing. That's just like 3 deep breaths and check in, how am I feeling? So that you're in masculine. The reminder goes off, how am I feeling? What's going on? 3 deep breaths. And then again, at the end of the day, wash off that masculine energy. I hope that's helpful.
I'd love if you could speak to social anxiety in particular. I feel a lot of anxiety when meeting new people, interacting in big groups, or even prior to seeing friends I'm close with. So, speaking as it relates to anxiety and others.
Yeah. So I'm sure if we could like do a show of hands here, like probably everyone would either say they're experiencing this right now or have experienced social anxiety. I certainly have. We talked about it on the podcast as well. It's such a good question. And it's not like a quick fix. Through the practices that we've talked about here, in learning to hold space for yourself, in learning that how to nurture yourself, one of the byproducts of learning to nurture yourself is a sense of, I'm okay. When I know that I know how to take care of myself, that anything could arise, that I could be in an uncomfortable situation with somebody where they could say something challenging, in that moment, if my anxiety rules, I get really in my head about what do I say and what's the right thing to say and what's going to get their love, their acceptance, their attention, their approval. And that's my anxiety speaking, which of course, I don't want to be in that situation. I don't want to be in a social situation that's going to stimulate that. So if I know that I'm somebody who's prone to social anxiety and the fear of judgment and the fear of what other people think about me, it's even more important that before I go into those settings, I take that bath. I spend time with myself. I nurture myself. I reassure myself. I connect with myself. And this is a question that I could go on in practices for about an hour. But if you adhere to the practices that I shared today, I think you'll find that social anxiety will start to diminish.
Completely agree, definitely. You mentioned a couple of times the study or the course teachings that you follow, but they didn't catch the name, something to do with miracles. Can you please elaborate or explain further? I'd love to learn more.
Yeah, so there's a text, it's a metaphysical text, so not a religious dogmatic text, called A Course in Miracles. It calls itself a psychological self-study mind training, which I know can sound super intense. But it says our issue is that we have a really untrained monkey mind that's just so unfocused and constantly creating our reality with all sorts of not enoughness and fear and anxiety, that mind is called the ego. And the Course in Miracles gives us 700 pages of like dense, almost Shakespearean text that explains the thought system of shifting, of enlightenment, of shifting from the mind of the ego to the mind of spirit or love. And then it has 365 lessons to put that thought system into practical practice every day. If what I'm saying you connect with, it's worth probably grabbing a copy. It took me 3 years to get through the 1 year. It can be really daunting and confusing. Our friend and mentor, Marianne Williamson, wrote a great book called A Return to Love, which is kind of like the Cliff Notes for A Course in Miracles, which is really helpful to kind of dive into it.
Yes, thank you.
What do you suggest or how to coach people who struggle with more of the second layer of anxiety, meaning the more fear of the fear versus the specific trigger?
I would invite you to boil it down much more simply. I think the creation of the idea that you're afraid of the fear, you're afraid of the feeling, is something that we all experience. We all experience that avoidance, that fear of the feeling, because we think it's going to destroy us. We think it's going to pull us off our center. We think it's going to weaken us, when in reality, the feeling of the feeling, as I said before, it actually allows us to experience what it's like to nurture ourselves, which is actually incredibly empowering. Just do the process.
Yeah.
Trust the process, y'all.
Amen. Dana was asking if you could just go deeper into the mind-body connection. She's kept a lot of stuff in, and it comes out through her body with massive physical anxiety. I experience that sometimes as well. She says the body doesn't lie. So what is that? Like, what is happening when we experience that physical anxiety? And I do think what you've discussed today can definitely quell that, but would love to hear your suggestions.
Yeah. There's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score that can explain that to you very scientifically, and in a way that is just more detailed than I can right now. So I would highly recommend that you grab the book, The Body Keeps the Score. Very briefly, any unprocessed emotion, trauma, stress, it gets stored in the body. And so anxiety can absolutely manifest itself physically. As Lindsay just said, going through these processes will help to kind of deregulate or turn some of that down. But I would highly, highly, highly for you, Dana, recommend getting The Body Keeps the Score, the book.
During this workshop, I've realized that I think that I've been mistaking anxiety for my chronic relentless stress. Do those two things kind of meld into each other, or does relentless stress become a catalyst for anxiety?
I have to apologize. I got distracted by a comment coming in, which I want to actually acknowledge that Nicole said. One other resource is Healing Back Pain by Dr. Joseph Sarno. There's also an amazing woman named Dr. Nicole Sachs, Sachs, who has a whole online program, and I can't remember what it's called right now. If you're experiencing physical manifestations of stress and anxiety, like migraines or back pain or any of those things, Sarno's book is amazing, and her program is really awesome too. Do you all know Nicole?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Dr. Nicole Sachs, Sachs, look her up online. You'll find her program. Can you reread that question?
Yeah, of course. It's the relationship between chronic stress and anxiety. So are they the same thing? If someone's chronically stressed, are they anxious, or how would you relate the two?
I'd say they're the same thing. I mean, chronic, relentless stress that we've experienced our whole lives that we haven't processed, and then the stress that we're experiencing today. The stressors are like the cause, and the anxiety that we're experiencing is like the effect. So they're kind of it's like a cause and effect relationship. So one of the things that tends to happen in our society today when we're experiencing anxiety is there's this thing that happens that says, okay, well, you should look at the things in your life today that are stressing you out and get rid of them. And what that tends to, while that's valuable, incredibly valuable, what it also tends to ignore is that we've also experienced a lifetime of unprocessed stress that we have to dig into as well.
Love it. Great. Okay. When you can recognize that people you work with or for you are not resonating with your boundaries, are there tools to deal with that specifically, since you can't exactly eliminate the people from your workspace?
Yeah. So firstly is like, take care of yourself. Keep the first attention on you and how you're doing and what they're bringing out in you and how you take care of yourself. And once you've done that self-awareness work and that self-regulation work, like we've talked about here, then formatting some way of consciously communicating with that person to invite them into an awareness of the facts of kind of, when this happens, this is what happens inside of me, and then making a request. So my request is, right? So if you have someone at work who's just like stressed all the time and like high energy and just like bursts into your office, and just to be able to say to that person, hey, consciously, right? If you say to that person, you're stressed all the time, and it's like, they're just going to get defensive. They're not going to hear you. I believe that we are responsible for how what we say lands with another person. So to be able to sit with that person and say, hey, there's something I'd like to talk to you about. Is now a good time? Actually, there's a great new Brene Brown episode on her podcast where the podcast episode is new. It's like, the title is like something like How to Say Sorry. And it talks about the steps of communication, of how we can consciously communicate, which, as I mentioned, I teach all the time. It's a process. But the cliff notes are set the space. So invite the, right? It's like, is now, there's something I'd like to talk to you about. Is now a good time, so that that person doesn't feel cornered? And then speak from first person about the experience. Hey, so what I notice is when there's like a high amount of energy that's like coming into my office and loudness, and what happens in me is that then I get stressed and I'm not able to focus and I become really unproductive, and then I don't communicate it, and then I build resentment, and I don't want to have that here. And so I'd really like to request, like, could you maybe be a little bit more aware of kind of what you're bringing into my space, of how it is that you're speaking to me, of like the intensity with which you're speaking to me, because I can't operate this way. And then you ask that person, so what do you think about that? Or how do you feel about that? And you go into it as a conversation. You may even start the conversation at the beginning by saying, I want to talk to you about something that's difficult for me to talk about, because I want you to know that this is me actually trying to find a solution here. And I want to have a conversation with you about it. So you set the tone. This isn't to be argumentative. This is to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yes.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about how to manage anxiety during this time when we're stuck at home in our own company with so many unknowns?
Firstly, it's okay. We're living in uncertain times. And most of us, or a lot of us, haven't ever experienced this kind of uncertainty, whether it's financial or our health. It's really unfamiliar. So give yourself grace and give yourself kindness to understand that this is a really impactful, intense time. And then secondly, we need to be doing these practices daily to facilitate these different energies in our life. So the working out is to use our energy system to get the spilkies out. The meditation is so that we build a relationship with the constant mind that's getting us in the anxiety. So we build a healthy relationship with it instead of believing it right away. We have room to question it and to not have that rule our life, right? Mm-hmm. The goddess time is an opportunity to wash away. So all of these things serve different purposes. And by the way, like when we're working from home, there's not really an excuse right now about getting your meditation in. There's not really the same level of, I don't have the time. Well, you used to drive to work a half an hour every day. What are you using that time for? So, and then the other piece, because we are in isolation, find a system of accountability. Mm. We won't do what we don't hold ourselves accountable for, and typically we need the help of others to be accountable.
Yes, definitely. If I wanted to address this with a primary parent and how I didn't feel safe growing up, how do I discuss it in a helpful way?
It's hard. And the parent, just like anyone I'm discussing this stuff with, will likely feel attacked. Even if we speak as consciously as possible, we are, one of the ways that humans survive is by creating a certain mentality about how things are. We retell history. So as a parent really sees that they did the best that they could, and also has a really hard time acknowledging the places where they could do better unless they're deeply on their path. So if we have a primary parent who is deeply on their path, it'll be easier to have this conversation with them because they're in the practice of acknowledging where they need growth. They're in the practice of looking at themselves.
Mm.
If we have a primary parent who is not in the consistent practice of looking at themselves and growing, they will very likely be incredibly defensive and unable to see how they impacted you, anything other than positively. So just firstly, depending on which parent you have, it may take more time. So let the stress off of, I only get to have one conversation with my parent like this. It takes years. And one conversation may peel back one layer, but there's probably thousands of layers that bit by bit by bit, one conversation may invite a little more awareness for them. So take the stress off of like the idea that like this needs to all happen and get fixed and perfected right now. The more compassion that you can go into the conversation with, the more knowing that your parents didn't not nurture you because they didn't love you. They didn't nurture you because they didn't know how. And that probably means that they were hurt, that their stuff wasn't healed, that they weren't raised in a household of real heart-driven nurturing and openness and communication and an emotional intelligence. So go into the conversation with a sense of compassion. And, you know, there's a line in A Course in Miracles that also says, we have very little influence over those who can sense our underlying discontent for them. I'll say that again. We have very little influence over those who can sense our underlying discontent for them. So if I go into a conversation with this heavy judgment and discontent for mom, for boss, for coworker, for boyfriend, whatever, that person can feel that from us, and their ability to hear our words goes out the window. So really become aware of how you're entering into the conversation.
Beautiful. Do you have any strategies for dealing with our own emotions? I found myself wanting to avoid feeling during the exercise, but because I know I wouldn't feel good, and I was worried for how long the feeling might go on.
Yeah. So I experienced that too. Okay. We all experience that. That avoidance, like when we go into that space of starting to feel, because we're not practiced in it, the head kicks in. Mm-hmm. It may say something like, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? Well, this is so obvious. Like, but really, like, what do my feelings have to do with this? Mm-hmm. And so what I want to invite you to do is make a commitment to yourself to, again, do these practices, and then just choose to practice this for the next like 7 days consistently. And then 7 days after that, hopefully, and then continue. The more you practice going from here to here, from here to here, from here to here, the less avoidance you'll have over time. But there's going to be a period of time where when you try to make that leap, this loudness, it cuts it off. Just then what we tend to do is we tend to say, this practice doesn't really work for me, right? Just like how when people think all the time in meditation, they go, oh, this practice doesn't really work for me. Like, yes, it is. Just keep going. Just stay disciplined.
Beautiful. I know there are a few parents on here, so I would, and they have a couple questions, but I'll combine them into one, just about, nurturing parenting practices. And I think this actually applies for people who don't have kids too, where you are like nurturing that inner child and having those conversations. So, Ryan, do you have any, suggestions for, consciously parenting and creating a relationship so that you aren't perpetuating maybe what we experienced as children and are working through now through our anxiety?
Yeah. Another resource, Dr. Shefali Tsabary, Tsabary. She has a book, I think it's called Conscious Parenting. Just listen to her. She can be quite triggering, by the way, because she talks about like egoic parenting and all of the unconscious stuff that happens that we project onto our children that's super unconscious, that we want our children to represent everything wonderful about us. And when they act out or when they misbehave, we're experiencing because we have no way to experience them, or we haven't developed a way to experience them as their own person, right? The ego sees them just as an extension of me. That when they misbehave, when they act out, I'm triggered as if it's bringing up a shadow part of myself. And so Dr. Shefali, Shefali, Sabari, Tsabary, conscious parenting. I would take a listen to that. And then from the trauma-informed perspective, or for the perspective that we've been sharing here today, the best thing you can do for your child is to take the time to ask them how they're feeling and to listen deeply. And when you notice that you want to coach them, when you notice that you want to fix them, don't. Bite your tongue and then ask them another question. Just ask them questions. How are you feeling? Get them in the practice of communicating how they're feeling to you, and then validate their feelings. How we validate their feelings is we say to them, I can really understand how you feel that way. Or, I relate to this because I know what it feels like in me when I feel da 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 da. Show them your fallibility. Show them your lack of perfection. Show them that you're not a perfect person. Stop being the parent who thinks that you need to show yourself as this perfect, developed, I have no problems parent, the way our parents kind of did with us. Show your vulnerability. Show them that you're afraid sometimes. Show them that you're an emotional person. Expose vulnerably that you have feelings and that you have doubts and concerns and fears, and that you still have faith and security within yourself to move through. Yeah. So Brene Brown also talked about this. There's a lot of wizards out there who talk about how she said she was doing an episode with an emotional intelligence expert, and he said to her, so it's the morning, it's 7:45 a.m., the kids have to be at school by 8 a.m., mom has to be at work by 8:02 a.m., and mom says to the daughter, how are you today, honey? And what would happen if that daughter actually said, kind of depressed, really anxious about this thing that's going on with this kid at school, and I don't really like my body, and I just really want to stay in bed. Brene herself said she'd probably say, as like the vulnerability expert, she'd probably say to her daughter, okay, let's talk about it on the way to school. When in reality, what a parent needs to say is, nothing matters more than sitting with you in what you're feeling right now and nurturing you here and talking about this and feeling it together. School doesn't matter more, work doesn't matter more, nothing matters more. And so if you can be the parent that has that kind of dynamic of safe space and not needing to fix your child. Don't put the pressure on yourself to think, I have to coach them through this. No, it's just about listening.
Mm-hmm.
Is that helpful?
Powerful. Yes, thank you. Okay, one more question.
Yes, I think there's a few questions on resources. So I know we mentioned a few. We mentioned Brene Brown's podcast. We talked about Course in Miracles and a few other works. But if there's anything on attachment styles, codependent relationships, or things that you recommend for people to dig into after this?
I would really recommend Onsite, which is a resource. They're doing digital stuff now. Onsite, as we mentioned before, is a experiential therapy trauma healing center. Obviously, because we can't gather in person, they're doing digital stuff right now, which I don't know what they're charging for it, but probably is far more discounted than the hefty cost of going and being there in person. So I would highly recommend checking out, I think it's onsiteworkshops.com. And then I don't really have recommendations for books on attachment. I talk about it all the time, though. If you guys don't already follow me on the gram, I talk about attachment almost every morning on my Instagram lives that I do at 7:30 a.m. Monday through Friday. That's a big one for me.
It's huge.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Where can people connect with you and find you? And let's talk about your offerings.
So I'm on Gram every day. I love the Instagram. So that's at Waking Up with Ryan. And then you can always message me through my website. There's like a contact thing, I think. Offerings, the two offerings currently are one-on-one coaching and group coaching. The group coaching is beautiful. We have 6 people over 5 weeks. We get into a lot of what we talked about today and go deeper into those things. I have a curriculum over those 5 weeks, and we have a community of accountability where we have daily check-ins. Every single day we're sharing our commitments with the group. We're holding each other in our integrity, and we're moving through a lot together. And that's really, really, talk about, like, I've been doing these groups a lot, and it's amazing to see what happens in these groups. And then the one-on-one coaching is a much more high-level investment. If you're somebody who has the resources and the time, my one-on-one coaching is like you're hiring me to have access to me pretty much at all times. We have 2 scheduled sessions every single week, and then you have access to me during the week when things are coming up. And we make a minimum of a 3-month commitment. So it's like hiring a coach, an accountability partner. It's a powerful process, but it's also a very large investment in time, energy, and finances. So it's not for everybody. The group coaching is much more accessible. Those are my offerings right now.
I love it. Thank you so much. Yeah, the accountability piece is so important as you're doing this work. So thank you all so much for taking the time, investing in yourself. It will make a difference. Be kind and gentle, after this workshop. Just rest. I think like integration is really important after like an intense focused session like this one. Ryan, we can't thank you enough. That was really beautiful, so powerful. And thank you all for participating in the comments and your questions. I'll put up some information as we leave the workshop, just Ryan's information. You'll be getting an email from Ryan on Monday with a meditation. You'll be receiving an email from us with the playback of this workshop so you can revisit at any time. But thank you again for allowing us to support you. We're always here for you. And we'll see you soon.
We'll see you soon. We love you guys.
Love you all. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being here. And I really just want to underscore what Lindsay just said. If you have the time and the space as you're jumping off of here to like go lay down, to take a bath, to go for a walk, resist the temptation to get into your phone and all the things, and just breathe, because this was a lot of stimulation. I know that I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go jump in the ocean.
Beautiful.
Y'all want to meet me there?
Honestly. Now that it's open.
Okay, see you there.
Bye, everyone.
Love y'all. Thank you.